Hey guys, it's Steven from KR Motorsports again. So we're back on our Tundra with our Fueltech 550 install. So on our last video we had the cam hooked up, and so this time around we've actually got a few more things hooked up. We've got all the injectors and all the coils. Now this happened beforehand, so I didn't document it, but to let y'all know, there's two things that we messed up on. And this is kind of one of those things that you come across when you're doing a standalone on something that's not super common. The first one was I actually had the injector number 6 wired up in the wrong spot. So I was looking at the pin, I had it on my notes incorrect, and it was one pin over. So we got that fixed. But the one major thing that did happen was we actually killed the coils. So on your ignition coils you have something that's called dwell. And I had looked up online and found like someone who supposedly had the dwell correct, and I copied and pasted it, and the truck actually ran totally fine, and then until it didn't. And we actually ended up killing 4 out of the 8 coils. So we went ahead and replaced all of them, because if 4 of them are bad, there's a good chance the other ones are going to follow. So those are all cheap AutoZone replacement coils there. So we've got everything basically done. So the Fueltech is mounted. We still haven't had wideband here. We're waiting on an O2 bung, but that'll be in shortly. And another thing is we haven't tapped temp sensors. So you got air temp and you got coolant temp. Fueltech calls that engine temp. So we actually tried to share it, and I wanted to catch it on film, but I didn't get a chance to. Just sorry guys, just so busy on that one. But basically we would tap into it through our patch harness, and the temperatures would change. And so what I mean by that is that we it's not running right now, but we had torque running on this, reading the stock ECU, and you could see that you know, the truck was warmed up at 200, then I would go tap the temp sensor, and then suddenly it'd go from 200 to 100. And that's just the thing with bias resistor type sensors. Again, sometimes you can get away with sharing them, but a lot of times you can't. So what we're doing for that is we're just going to run its own separate intake air temp and its own separate coolant temp sensor. Not a big deal, not the end of the world, a small little thing that we have to deal with. So currently right now the Fueltech has control of the ignition and the fuel. So even if we disconnect the MAF or something, you know, something fails like coolant temp sensor or something like that, it's not going to change anything. The stock ECU is still in control of the throttle. And we made a little revelation on that. So we originally tried to tap the accelerator pedal for that, and it did not work. So we actually ended up tapping the throttle body side of it. Now the downside of that is that when the idle changes, because the stock ECU is in control of that, the TPS will dance on its own. So I don't know if you saw it flicker right there for a second. That's because the ECU made a change, because it's drive-by-wire, so there's no idle valve, and then it reflects that change on the Fueltech. But other than that, that's really about it. So we're making pretty good headwind here. We should have the rest of the parts for it tomorrow, and then hopefully get you guys another video here shortly of it. But in the meantime, listen to that beast there. So we'll get this all wrapped up here pretty soon. Like I said, hopefully by this weekend we'll have the coolant temp, air temp, and then wideband all hooked up, and then we will actually start going for some real tuning for it. Once we get that done, then the next thing is we're going to be stripping the transmission control away from the stock ECU, and then the Fueltech, hopefully if everything goes well, will control that as well.